Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and the first MiSTer FPGA video of 2026. That is because the bell has dropped, it's past midnight, and we are now in January 1st. Maybe about a week and a half ago, I talked about the entire archive dump of the Sega Channel, all of the prototypes and games that had complete differences. And of course, retro gaming being retro gaming, somebody like Shane Lynch decided to go in and make a MiSTer FPGA core to recreate the actual Sega Channel experience here with ROMs made by Billy Time Games. And this is why I love MiSTer FPGA and the retro gaming community in general. It isn't just enough that this archive came out, somebody decided, wouldn't it be amazing if you could navigate Sega Channel like it was the mid-90s again, and you could just sit down and enjoy it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. And I'm sure you saw off the top that you're actually navigating around the actual Sega Channel menus, seeing all of the different text information that would have been available if you were playing this like in 1993 or 1994. And from a preservation standpoint alone, that is absolutely insane, and I love to see it, using the MiSTer FPGA Sega Genesis core in conjunction with this actual set to basically pretend like you've gone back in time. Because a lot of times when these archives dump, sure, you can play the games, yes, you can check out the prototypes, and that is the most important thing, but actually getting in and understanding the vibe of what Sega Channel was, how it worked, especially for me who never had this back in the day, this is the type of stuff that really makes it feel almost like magic. The idea that you can actually travel back in time and experience this thing for the first time. And again, there's going to be a lot of different fun games in this pack. There's going to be a lot of prototypes that have never seen the light of day before, as well as some retail games that are going to have a lot of differences compared to what actually came out on cartridge, because some of the games on the Sega Channel were released both on cart as well as on this download service at the same time. But think of it this way, if you could actually go back and use the internet like mid-90s when you were in AOL, when you had the dial-up tone, and basically sit down at a computer and time travel back into what that actually felt like, that is basically what's happening here with the Sega Channel FPGA core. It is a lot of fun to play around with. Now, of course, you can load up all of these ROMs outside of this core as well into the standard Sega Genesis or Mega Drive core and experiencing everything the same way. But there really is something fun about going through the menu structure and checking everything out, because some of these ROMs are going to have all of these menus and you can see all of the different demos, all of the different text descriptions, and you're going to get some prototype games here that actually release, but you're going to get earlier test versions of them. There actually is a lot of stuff to play around with here, some games that are definitely going to seem familiar, some that you've probably never heard of before, but a demo of something like Ghosts and Goblins here on the Sega Channel, this is just one of the best games on Sega of all time in my opinion, that doesn't involve any sort of hedgehogs, and it's here on the Sega Channel, and you can just sit down and maybe crack open a Crystal Pepsi, I think that was around at the same time that the Sega Channel was, and just basically pretend like you are back in the day. And I really love the MiSTer FPGA community for doing stuff like this. It's completely not essential, but it's completely amazing at the same time. And again, people are still researching all of the dumps that happened like a week and a half ago, finding all of the differences in games, because for some of these instances, these games haven't actually seen the light of day since they were broadcast on the Sega Channel. It's just kind of like the Satellaview in Japan for the Super Famicom. Some of this stuff just hasn't been seen since back then, so you're probably going to see a lot of people doing deep dives into all of the files and games here, trying to figure out exactly what changed, what stayed the same, and what is new and different. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me if you played around with any of the Sega Channel archive dump as of yet, and did you actually have one back in the day, because I was actually surprised when I first talked about this, the amount of people that said they either had it or had a friend who had it. It seems like 9 out of 10 people that did get to play it back in the 90s had a friend that had this at their house. I'm highly assuming everyone was friends with that one rich kid who had basically everything, and I don't really remember any of my friends having Sega Channel back in the day, but I do remember it being advertised in magazines, and I think maybe I saw it in a store somewhere, maybe when we were actually getting a new cable box, maybe been sitting on the shelf there as something you could get. I would have absolutely loved to have had something like this, but of course I just didn't, so this is basically the closest as you're ever going to get to experiencing it on quote-unquote real hardware. Let's do the first of 2 soundtrack samples, X Mutants here. Really fun game on Sega Channel with a great soundtrack, just so you can hear what it sounds like here on the Sega Channel core, but come back because I got a lot more fun games to show you. I mean, honestly, there's going to be some games in here that you probably never heard of before or never experienced, like Crystal's Pony Adventure. Is it worth playing as far as the game is concerned? Probably not whatsoever. Is it worth experiencing on the Sega Channel? Absolutely, 10 out of 10. And honestly, this kind of reminds me of a project I've been working on that I'm going to be setting up at my new house in my game room and studio on one of my PVMs. You can use a Raspberry Pi and basically set it up as a media server, but you can do it into a 4x3 television and basically recreate cable from the 90s with an actual menu and channels and everything else. And I kind of miss those days where you just kind of pushed up and down on the channel select and saw what was on, because in our current streaming environment there's absolutely an unlimited amount of options, and honestly I can never decide on what the hell my wife and I are going to watch. We spend more time talking about what we might want to watch than actually watching that. And I love the theming here as well. Clearly this one came out probably around Christmas or winter, and you have different custom backgrounds that would have been made by Sega for the Sega Channel back in the day. So there is a really fun seasonality to all of this. Something like body count here, basically a pseudo light gun game. It is absolutely a vibe, and maybe one that no one's ever played before. You leave me a comment down below and you tell me if you ever actually checked this one out. And this, again, is just such a great move for preservation. The ability not to just be able to experience these games, but to experience them in the way they would have actually been seen in the 90s. Because a lot of times we would love to travel back in time and kind of get that experience for the first time again. And even though some things are still achievable, a lot of times you had to be there to actually understand exactly how things worked and how they felt. Just imagine being a kid in the 90s and thinking to yourself, I want to play something different that I don't have right now. You turn on your Sega Genesis, you load up the Sega Channel, and you try a new game or a demo for a game, basically just the same way you would use Netflix but for video games. It was super forward thinking, and obviously it had limited success, but Sega never tried anything like this again for the Saturn. But I'm sure that's just because the internet was not available to actually download games that would have been CD size 650 to 700 megabytes versus something like a game ROM, which was still big for a cable connection back in the day, but was a little bit more manageable. And obviously we moved over to a different quote-unquote ROM here for more of a Halloween theme, so you can have those pumpkins in the background, and you have the Sega Channel logo guy just doing some backflips in the corner. That is where a lot of the charm of this thing comes, and of course in that Halloween collection you're going to get something like Garfield here playing the Dracula level, so some of the game demos, some of the games added would be themed around kind of the holidays, and that again is a lot of fun. These are the type of things back in the day you absolutely wanted to check out, and honestly Garfield, straight up 10 out of 10 game. I don't think it really is a 10 out of 10, but I love Garfield, read all the comics as a kid, so I'm always charmed by this one, and honestly it's not like Garfield has a ton of games out there that you would say would be worth playing. But this is something back in the day you could have downloaded on Sega Channel and played around in your house, and now you can do the exact same thing for MiSTer FPGA. And if you do want to check this out, I have left a link in the description below. But let's do another quote-unquote soundtrack sample that's going to involve the actual Sega Channel music. It is a fun vibe, so go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back with just a little bit more Sega Channel. Love how dramatic and intense the music is there for what's clearly the Easter Sega Channel release, because you have jelly beans in the background. Sometimes the music might not be an exact tonal match to the visuals you're seeing on the screen, but it is fun that all of that is still incorporated in here. And honestly, this is the type of thing that I like to call, at least with my wife, needless whimsy. There is no real reason for this to exist. It really isn't doing anything completely different than you could load up on the main Sega Genesis or Mega Drive core, but it gives you a completely new way to play and experience these games, and it makes it feel like you actually have a Sega Channel piece of hardware under your television hooked up to your Sega Genesis, and for that reason and that reason alone, this is some of my most favorite stuff of the end of 2025, even if you're watching this in 2026. This stuff just kind of recaptures a moment and a bit of magic that you didn't think was actually recoverable, and that is why projects like MiSTer FPGA are so important. It's not just about being able to play the games the way you want to play them, it's about being able to experience them in the right context. But we are done. Hope you enjoyed the video. Happy New Year's, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.